Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Muhammad Layak Siddiqui, the father of Holophase. We begin with our woven summary. Only what we have already certified, nothing new. Up to this point, in episode 14, we have built a strict extraction pipeline for public structure. We only speak inside licensed finite windows, with passports and coherence thresholds. We lift locally, cut only as bookkeeping, excise alias zones, and certify a lawful domain D. On D, we compute the first public object, A equals D phi tilde, and we read it in triunity. Time as omega, space as kappa, motion as nu, always recomposing back to A. We type degeneracies so undefinedness becomes honest. We define the holophase language as finite jet sentences up to n max. We audited commutation only where smoothness and legality authorize it. Now we install the second lie detector. Boundary and interior must agree, or we classify the failure. Now listen carefully, because part 23 is one of the most human parts of the whole compiler. This part is about wholeness. It is about whether our story balances. Not in the poetic sense, in the accountant sense. Because the universe does not owe us romance, but our descriptions owe us honesty. Here is the title in our everyday voice. Part 23 is the accounting of wholes, what the edge owes the center. In part 22, we learn something that sounds small, but is actually a moral rule for mathematics. We learned that the order of asking questions doesn't matter is not a birthright. It is a privilege. You only get to commute derivatives where the stage is certified smooth and the domain is legal. If you commute without permission, you are cheating. Part 23 is the next step. It is not pointwise anymore. It is not about one tiny spot. It is about a loop, a hole, a closed walk, a circuit. Because a loop is the simplest form of hole we can audit. And the rule of this part is simple enough that a child can understand it. If you walk around the edge of something, what you measure on the edge must match what the inside allows, once you respect the rules of the language. If it does not match, we do not call it magic. We classify the failure. That is the mission. Mission. Force agreement between what the boundary claims and what the interior allows, modulo the language. Core. If boundary and interior disagree, we do not romanticize it. We classify it. Now I want to give you the picture you can hold in your mind for the entire part. Imagine a kingdom surrounded by a wall. That wall is the boundary. Inside the wall is the interior. And we are responsible for a single sacred job, to keep the books. We are not allowed to say the numbers don't match, therefore invisible spirits exist. We are not allowed to say the books don't balance, therefore a new force must be hiding. No. We are auditors. If the numbers do not match, it is a debt in the ledger. And debts have only a few legal explanations. Either someone made a bookkeeping mistake, or there is a hidden hole in the system, a defect, something real we did not account for. Or we are counting in the wrong currency, because the language is modulo. Or the territory was never certified in the first place. Or, and only then, if all of that is excluded, we have found an escape candidate, a structure that does not fit our compiler and forces an extension. So part 23 is a lie detector for holes. It is a way to take a loop inside a certified domain D and ask, do the books balance? Now let's translate this into the holophase language, but spoken like a human. We have only one primitive, phi, a cyclic comparability map from X to the circle S1. We do not speak absolute phi. We only speak differences, delta phi, inside the licensed window. Inside that window, we built a local lift, phi tilde, so we can do lawful differentiation on the certified domain D. And the first public object we can certify is A equals D phi tilde. Say it out loud with me. A equals D phi tilde. A is not a force. It is not a substance. It is not a geometry we smuggled in. A is the public carrier of local change, extracted from comparisons. And triunity is mandatory. A can be read in time, space, and motion. Time readout is omega, the time-like rate of change. Space readout is kappa, the space-like pattern of change. Motion readout is nu, the motion-like drift derived from omega and kappa were legal. But we never worship omega alone, or kappa alone, or nu alone. They must recompose to A. Now, what does it mean to walk around the loop in this language? It means we take our certified A field and we sum it along the boundary. In calculus language, that is a line integral. But we are speaking for audio, so we say it like this. We add up A along the loop, step by step, all the way around. That sum is what the boundary claims. Call it the boundary term. Boundary term, the accumulated phase change around the loop, built from A. Now, what does the interior claim? The interior claim is built from how A curls or twists inside. In calculus language, we take a derivative of A and integrate over the interior area. In audio language, we say, we add up the little turning, the little circulation content across the whole interior. That sum is what the interior allows. Call it the interior term. Interior term, the total curl-like content of A summed across the inside. And the sacred accounting rule, the one that is as old as honest mathematics, is that these must agree, as long as we are in the legal conditions. That rule is what mathematicians call a Stokes-type theorem. In 2 dimensions, it is Green's theorem. In 3 dimensions, it is Stokes' theorem. In higher language, it is the same idea. Boundary equals interior. But we don't need the name, we need the meaning. Meaning, the edge and the inside must balance. Now here is the crucial Holophase twist that makes this different from a textbook. We do not run this as a belief. We run it as an audit. We do not say, Stokes must be true. We say, we will test whether our certified field A on our certified domain D with our certified loop balances boundary and interior within uncertainty. And if it does not balance, we do not panic. We classify the failure. Now let's install the 4 gates, but we will weave them as a story, not as a checklist. Gate 1 is the certified subdomain gate. Before we even draw a loop, we must certify the territory. The loop must sit fully inside the certified domain D, and the region inside the loop must also sit inside D. And we need a collar, a buffer distance, from alias zones and boundaries. Because if your loop touches illegal territory, the audit is meaningless. You're adding up counterfeit numbers. This gate is the one that says, no certified territory, no audit. Gate 2 is loop certification. Not every loop is a lawful loop. A lawful loop is closed, well-defined, and walkable. A loop must be defined all along it. If there is a cut, a branch cut, then the cut must be declared as bookkeeping, and we must know exactly how the lift jumps across it. Otherwise, your boundary sum is polluted by an undeclared jump, and you will call it a mystery. But it is not a mystery. It is a bookkeeping lie. So this gate says, no certified loop, no boundary claim. Gate 3 is modulo discipline. This is where Holophase becomes breathtakingly honest. Phi lives on a circle. That means phase is sightly. That means adding 2 pi, a full turn, does not change what is physically different. If you are listening without math background, here is the simplest picture. Imagine a clock. 12 o'clock and 12 o'clock are the same position, even though you can say you went around the clock once. Phase is like that. So when we add up phase change around the loop, we must respect the modulo rule. We reduce the sum modulo 2 pi. In audio language, we say we measure the net turn around the loop, but we count full turns as full turns, not as infinite numbers. We record how many wraps happened. This gate prevents fake drama. Because without modulo discipline, you can turn a simple wrap into a huge number and pretend you discovered the giant effect. Holophase says no. Modulo discipline is the currency rule of the ledger. Gate 4 is the diagnosis gate. This is the heart. This gate does the audit and classifies mismatch. It takes the boundary term and the interior term and it compares them. It uses uncertainty budgets because real data is noisy. We don't demand perfect equality. We demand agreement within certified tolerance. If the mismatch is small, the books balance. If the mismatch is big, we do not scream. We diagnose. We ask the only sane questions. Did we cross a cut and forget to account for it? Did we get too close to alias territory where our sampling forged fake curls? Is the passport failing locally, coherence too low, identifiability too weak? Or is there a defect inside the loop, a real topological object that our smooth jet language cannot capture at the core, but whose presence is revealed by the mismatch? This is where PAL 23 becomes one of the most powerful detectors we have. Because the loop audit does not just catch mistakes, it discovers hidden defects. Now let me make this whole thing so concrete that you can feel it in your bones. Imagine you are walking around a mountain lake. You hold a small compass and a notebook. Every step you take, you record the direction of the shoreline and the little turning you are making. When you return to your starting point, if the land is ordinary and continuous, the total turning you experienced should match what the interior shape of the lake implies. But imagine something strange. Somewhere inside the lake, there is a whirlpool. Not on the edge, inside. You don't see it directly from the shore, but its presence changes the circulation pattern. When you walk the loop and add up the turning, you detect a non-zero wrap. That wrap is not a mystery force. It is a defect token, a vortex-like object in the interior. This is the deep idea. Loops reveal what points can hide. A point audit, like part 22, can tell you something is wrong here. A loop audit can tell you there is a counted object inside and here is its strength. Now let's do examples across scales so you feel the fractal reach. First, the everyday scale. Money in a shop. A shop has cash drawers. It has receipts. It has inventory. At the end of the day, the shop owner can compute profit two ways. Boundary method, sum all sales and expenses recorded at the boundary of transactions. Interior method, count actual cash, count actual inventory, compared to yesterday. If they do not match, the shop does not invent magic. It checks misentered receipt, stolen goods, missing stock, wrong counting units, or the accounting period was wrong. That is part 23. Second, the biological scale, your body. You can measure what you eat and what you excrete, boundary flows. You can measure your weight change and tissue change, interior accumulation. If they do not match, you don't conclude mystery metabolism force. You check measurement error, water retention, hidden bleeding, hormonal shifts, wrong time window, or uncounted energy storage. Again, boundary and interior must balance, or classify the failure. Third, the planetary scale, Earth's energy balance. Boundary method. Measure sunlight coming in and infrared going out at the top of the atmosphere. Interior method. Measure heat stored in oceans, land, ice. Mismatch does not automatically mean unknown cosmic energy. It can mean sensor calibration error, missing deep ocean heat, aerosols not accounted, cloud feedback not resolved, or wrong window license. Boundary and interior must balance, or classify the failure. Fourth, the quantum scale. I will use a famous example because it shows the exact logic in a dramatic way, but I will say it in our grammar. In quantum experiments with phase, you can have a region that is inaccessible, a hole in the domain. Particles travel around the hole, they never enter it. Yet the loop integral around that hole can be non-zero. People call it spooky. Holophase calls it a topology token, a hole with a charge-like content. The loop detects it. The interior you can access might look curl-free, but the boundary still accumulates phase because the domain is not simply connected. That is not action at a distance. That is the accounting of a whole. The books balance when you include the defect token. This is why part 23 is not a fancy math trick. It is a way to stop humans from turning missing bookkeeping into metaphysics. Now we need to say something crucial because we are in holophase. We must not smuggle geometry. We must not pretend space is a container. So when we say boundary and interior, what do we mean? We mean within a certified domain D, which is just a set of places in the window where our operators are legal, we can choose a closed path. That closed path is the boundary of some region in D. The interior is just the region whose boundary is that path. No metric is required. No distance is required. We only need adjacency and orientation enough to define around and inside in a topological sense. This is why topology tokens exist in the language: hole, boundary, defect. And now I want to link part 23 back to triunity, because triunity is mandatory. Where does triunity live in this lie detector? It lives in the fact that A is one object, and we can walk loops in different slices. We can do a loop in space at fixed time. We can do a loop in time and space together, like a ribbon. We can do a loop in a motion-adapted frame, but we must be careful because motion readout nu is derived and only legal where kappa is non-zero. But no matter what, the loop audit is always about A, not about our favorite projection. If someone tries to do boundary interior accounting using omega alone, without recomposition to A, we revoke it. If someone tries to do it using kappa alone, without recomposition, we revoke it. If someone tries to do it using nu alone, we revoke it. Triunity is the guarantee that we are auditing a real public object, not a shadow. Now I want to state the prediction of this part in plain language. Prediction. Most boundary interior mismatches will shrink under audit into two things: either a defect token we forgot to include, or a bookkeeping failure like a cut, an alias zone, or a passport problem. Meaning, the realm of mystery forces will get smaller the more honest we become, because many mysteries are just unpaid debts in the ledger. Now the falsifier. This is important, because our framework does not protect itself with vague escapes. It gives a real falsifier. Falsifier. A systematic mismatch that remains after we exclude defects, cuts, aliasing, boundary color issues, and passport failure. In human language, if we can show that the loop and its interior are fully certified, smooth, legal, far from aliasing, with no cuts crossing, no defect inside. And yet, boundary and interior still disagree far beyond uncertainty, and this happens repeatedly, not as a one-off glitch, then our compiler is missing something real. That mismatch becomes an escape candidate, not a proof of magic, not a license for mythology. An escape candidate, a structured failure that demands a justified extension later. Now let me give you the carry, the phrase you take forward. Carry. If boundary and interior disagree, we classify the failure. That is the soul of part 23. Now we must speak the revocation clause clearly, because episode 14 is a firewall. Revocation clause. Mismatch without admissible diagnosis becomes an escape candidate and triggers the escape protocol later. Claims that romanticize mismatches as fundamental forces are revoked. Now, let's run the whole audit as a single vivid story, start to finish, so it becomes narratable in your mind. We have a licensed window. We have a passport. We have coherence above the minimum. We have identifiability and an Nmax ceiling. We have a local lift phi tilde on a domain D. We have A equals D phi tilde. We choose a subdomain inside D, far from alias zones, far from boundaries, with a color. We draw a loop. We certify the loop. We confirm A is defined along it, and any cut crossings are declared. We walk the loop and add up A along it. We apply modulo discipline because phase is cyclic. We compute the boundary term. Then we look inside the loop and compute the interior term, the total curl-like content of A in the interior. We propagate uncertainty so we know what mismatch could be explained by noise. We compare. If they agree, we have a certified consistency. If they disagree, we do not panic. We open the ledger and classify. Is the mismatch explained by a cut jump? Is it explained by alias leakage? Is it explained by passport failure? Or does it point to a defect token inside the loop? If a defect token is confirmed, we enrich our description. Jets describe the smooth field between defects, and defect tokens describe the discrete holes in the story. If none of the classifications work, we label it unexplained and escalate it as an escape candidate. That is the lie detector. Now I want to say something deeply important about what this does to science and to the human mind. Humans are pattern hungry. We see imbalance and we invent invisible beings. We see mismatch and we call it a new force. We see a gap and we pour mythology into it. Holophase is a discipline designed to cue that reflex, not by killing wonder, but by relocating wonder to the right place. The right place is not we found a mismatch, therefore magic. The right place is we found a mismatch, we diagnosed it honestly, and we discovered a defect token, a real topological object that is now part of the certified language. That is deeper than magic, because it is auditable, and because it is universal. It applies in the ocean, in the brain, in markets, in magnets, in storms, in crystals, in any domain where we extract a phase-like comparability field and differentiate it. Now we finish with the audit artifact, because episode 14 does not just speak, it writes ledgers. Audit artifact, loop logs, boundary and interior mismatch maps, defect candidate flags, failure taxonomy entry. In human language, for every loop audit, we record the passport ID, the loop path, the color clearance, the boundary sum with modulo reduction, the interior sum, the mismatch, the uncertainty threshold, and the diagnosis code. And we record what happened, balanced, defect added, bookkeeping error found, or escape candidate flagged. That is what it means to make science public, not just a claim, but a trail. Now we end with the line that keeps us honest. Episode 14 does not describe reality. It specifies the conditions under which reality can be described at all. And we close with a final listener note you requested. If you want to dive deeper into the formal work behind these lie detectors, you can find it on Zenodo by searching for Holophase. That's it. PAL 23 is now installed. The second lie detector is operational. The books must balance, and when they don't, we don't worship the imbalance. We classify it. Always, peace be upon you.